Yeah. 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 So many lies that you hear from the net, they don't get her respect. She reporting the truth, not a check. You want an unbiased opinion straight from the chest, not a bit of accomplice or someone here for a check. Tune in, these are thoughts from a lawyer on a mission who goes so hard it's like she works on commission. Trolls in the comments might say she tripping cause they lack the knowledge, they don't know they missing. Got a couple current events that you like, wanna know about law from the eyes. Tired of all these blogs running lies because their agendas are disguised. Tune in to the intellect, cause I'm sure y'all missing all the facts of the case that she steady is gifting. Someone here for the people, man, it's so uplifting. If you ain't subscribed yet, then you just omitting facts.
You's a clown, that's what you. Why don't you call me a cardboard bishop now? Huh? You tough? Call me a cardboard bishop now.
He's not gonna call you that.
Huh? Look on Facebook Live. Call me a cardboard bishop now. You clown. That's what you are. You clown. That's what you are. Why don't you say what you say on Facebook Live, sucker?
No.
Hello, everyone. It is Pam Esquire, also known as Your Law Intellect. If you are new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Please do us a favor and hit that like button so other intellects and maybe people that want to be intellects will know that we are on. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please make sure that you subscribe to this here channel. I miss you all. It's been forever. I did not realize how long it's been since I've been on. That's just how hard I've been working. Then last week I had to have some oral surgery, so I couldn't talk anyway. So the only time I could talk is to take a couple of pills so I can go and do my hearings. That's all I was doing last week. But anyway, I am so glad to be back. The internet has been on fire the last couple of weeks. It was unsafe. At one point, it was unsafe. If you said a word on this internet, you might lose your job. You might lose your freedom of speech. It just was not safe to even be on the internet. It was a lot going on. You had Christians versus Christians. You had whites versus black. You had jobs versus the people. You had the government versus the people. You had the freedom of speech being on the line. It was just so much going on. Okay. And so I am just glad that we have made it to another Monday. And I hope you guys had a fabulous day. Again, I missed you guys. I really, really did. Hopefully, you guys had a good couple of weeks and enjoyed all the shenanigans on the internet. I want to thank everyone who was watching the old videos, giving me some views and all of that on the videos that we have already done over here. I appreciate you. I appreciate all the comments, even the negative comments. You know, I almost for 1 second, it was a couple of you I wanted to call and pay Cardi B to do a diss track on you. So few of y'all, I wrote your names down too, that I just want to call Cardi B and ask her, can she diss some of y'all like she dissed that girl on that track? That I don't even know who any of these people are, but yeah, I was listening to Cardi B stuff as well. All right. So be careful. All right. Because I might have to hit her up if you guys keep cutting up in these comments. But thank you so much for the engagement. I appreciate you. So you guys saw the thumbnail. We're going to talk about Lamor Whitehead. So a few weeks ago, Lamor Whitehead had, I guess, his attorney or some PR or whoever to do a post over there on Facebook. And he basically said that, you know, what he's always been saying, that he was railroaded because they wanted to incarcerate him or charge him just to get at the mayor. So they really didn't want him. They wanted the mayor. Now we kind of came to that conclusion because, I mean, who was Lamor Whitehead that they was going so hard? So we kind of agreed with that. Like, yeah, you probably weren't the original target. And then what happened is they started looking into your background and your emails, and they found some fishy things going on, or i.e., fake check stubs and doctored bank statements. And then not to mention, you know, Miss Anderson and the fake, I guess, rental property, a property, or whatever was going on with her. It was just a lot going on. So, do I think originally they were trying to get the mayor? I would agree with you on that. I've always said it, but the bottom line is, when I went to that trial, I have never in my entire life seen so much evidence of which they corroborated they corroborating evidence upon their corroborating evidence. So they would have the phone, they would have the text inside the phone, then they would have the phone records, then they would have an expert to ping to where the phone was, then they had your side of the conversation in the records, then they had their side of the conversation, then they had FaceTime recordings, and they had recording. I said, well, golly, my goodness. So, after that trial, I didn't know what he was going to appeal, but apparently he's been trying to appeal and get out on bond since all of this started. Well, since he was convicted, it's been a little bit over a year that he's been sentenced and convicted. So, he's still trying to get out. And yeah, when that motion came down, I'm gonna tell you, okay. In the words of Cardi B, I'm pretty and I'm petty, all right. And so when I first saw that he wrote something, I was like, nah, that man tried to say that my whole entire channel was built off of him. So I'm paying him dust. Like, nobody's gonna talk about him for real if I don't really say anything. And that is the truth. It's not gonna be too many people. You have some content creators where we all were talking about him at the same time. But for the most part, you weren't mainstream media. He wasn't, or he was infamous, but he wasn't famous. He just was, he lived in another alternate reality. And apparently he must got people thinking that he is really a celebrity, because they did do this press, release on his platform, basically saying he is fighting to get out and fighting for a new trial and fighting for bail. And when I read it, I was like, I'm not even talking about him. Nope, I'm not talking about him at all. I'm not going to talk about him at all. And then I read the government's response and I was like, I kind of giggled a little bit. So now I said, you know what? I folded. So now I'm going to talk about him today. And part of the reason why I am going to talk about him is because the government's response pretty much lays out all of the things that he has, all the documents, I should say, that he has filed attempting to get this case dismissed and attempting to get out of jail on bond. All right. He is currently in the federal penitentiary. For those that don't know who Whitehead is, we got a lot of videos on him. He is somebody ordained him. Okay. He's supposed to be a bishop. He's an apostle. And he is if you were on the internet like that, you probably saw a church that got robbed over there in New York. Hmm. That's how we got to know who he even was. So once the robbery happened, he tried to capitalize off of that robbery, and he tried to do a press conference. Some people said they thought it was fake. I never said it was fake. Now that's one of the things I did not say. Some people said it was fake. I never believed it was fake. And there are a couple of men who are currently doing time for that robbery. The third guy ended up being on the run all the way until he got into a police shootout. Then he ended up unalive. But what Bishop Whitehead tried to do was, when that robbery happened, he said, this is my time to shine. You know how they tell you, like, get in while the getting is good? That's what he was trying to do. So what he did was put out this clarion call for pastors all over the world to come and to stand next to him as he tried to protect buildings, and he wanted pastors to be able to carry, because he was supposed to be cool, with Mayor Adams. So this is where all of this stemmed from. So he stands outside at the podium, and no pastors came to support him. He was by himself. He had some lady who did a press release and all of that, and his PR was standing out there. And then there were a bunch of reporters, and these reporters were from New York, so they were more familiar with Whitehead than we were. that are not from New York. And these reporters started just asking questions that had absolutely nothing to do with the robbery. For example, Mr. Whitehead, we went to your, let me see if I got my little microphone. Mr. Whitehead, we went to your house and there was a notice from Connecticut Properties that it's going into foreclosure. Do you have anything to say about that? Mr. Whitehead, yeah. You want all the pastors and stuff. Yeah, they ain't asked none of them questions. Mr. White, he's like, any other questions? Yeah, you, Mr. Whitehead. What do you have to say about Pauline Anderson and her saying that you have taken money from her? Uh, Mr. Whitehead, what about everything that this man has allegedly ever done in his life? They were bringing up, and apparently when we googled his name over here, we found out he had been in the media for a while over there in New York for various reasons. So they had been on his neck, calling him the bling bling bishop. And this is the guy that had all the Gucci suits with the G's all over him, looking like a tacky box. He was looking like a goofy and thought he was really doing it and doing it right, but he was looking like a goofball. All right. So this is who Whitehead is. If you are interested and this sounds something that you want to get a little kicks and giggles out of, we have a whole lot of videos. So you have to go back there in order to check out those videos. So that is my intro. All right. So I'm going to say hi. Joy been on here the whole time. So girl, I said hi to you because you've been on here for a little minute here. So Patty said the church members left a comment about him still in the church. Yeah, it was so the church, there was also a church situation. And let me tell you about this guy. So it all came out with the documents that we went over here. He ended up suddenly he was doing a service from a church. And we were like, this guy got a real church. All right. Because at first when the robbery happened, it was like a little storefront. You had to walk upstairs. It was an event space where they did baby showers and stuff. And it was real small, even though he said we lost hundreds of people after the pandemic. I was like 20 people on that camera when he got robbed. But he just grandized everything. Everything was bigger than really what it was. And he thought that, and this is why he hated my guts and called me bald-headed Pam, like it was going to hurt my feelings. The reason why he did that was because I was looking up his documents and I just went by what really happened. What orders are out here? Is he telling the truth? What was going on? Because he had been to prison before for similar accusations of like identity theft, like crimes involving theft and dishonesty. And so he was all of a sudden he was doing these services. He had the big screen in the back doing football services. We're like, what? Okay, he got him a church. Next thing you know, it was a church called Gloria God filing a landlord-tenant lawsuit to try to get him evicted up out of that space. And we was like, what? And they were like, yes, he stole our church. I said, how you steal a whole building? They said he stole a whole building. Thank you, Granny and Great. So I'm like, okay, so that was their allegation. So they went to court. The court said, you got to go, bro. And he still wouldn't leave. And so he appealed it. And I don't know what happened with the appeal, but it was this big old tussle for like 6 months for them trying to get into this building. So when finally they told them, the judge was like, listen, this is the order. You got to go, bro. He filed for bankruptcy. So he filed for bankruptcy, which stays all orders. So he was able, you cannot act on the order. Like they couldn't go cut locks and try to get in the building or do anything and act on the order because he had filed for bankruptcy. So then he goes in for this bankruptcy hearing, which appeared to be a stall tactic because it really wasn't. I don't know if he really planned on going all the way through with it. So then they get to the bankruptcy court. Now, all of this stuff, we went over this as well. Get to the bankruptcy court, and the real owner, I guess, in trust, it was an issue on something happened where Gloria Guy owned it, and then it was some tax issues and whether a nonprofit was supposed to pay taxes. Ended up going into a tax sale. They were in negotiation, I guess, to buy it back. The people who owned it, who bought it from the tax sale, apparently Gloria God was still paying mortgages. It was just a lot going on with this church. Okay. But the people that owned it that bought it from the tax sale, I don't think they were ever going to try to come for the church at all. But then I guess, according to them, Whitehead came to them to buy the church. So a part of them buying the building, they gave him some type of partial trustee over the building, and then it was a mess. Okay, but anyway, you have to go on those videos. So then at the end of the day, nothing happened. Whitehead wasn't showing up and all that. The bankruptcy gets dismissed. So once the bankruptcy gets dismissed after tangling around for 3 months in bankruptcy court, I mean, the judge was on there like, something's not right. These documents ain't right. The judge in the bankruptcy court said that they may send it over to the DOJ because they felt like, something wasn't right with all of this paperwork that people were coming up with. So anyway, the bankruptcy gets dismissed right before the hearing. So Gloria God is about to get in the building again. So they're there. I got the links. We were live. We're about to go to the building. We were virtually going to the building. And then he shows up with his like handlers and stuff. He got guys there. They fighting not to let him in the building. And then he like went and filed bankruptcy again or something. It was a mess. Then finally, after a standoff, they were able to get their building back. And they've been in the building ever since. And we got to watch on live Whitehead having to remove his throne chair that he had over in that church. He had to move it out of there. I guess it was equipment that he owned. He had to take that out. All the stuff that he had up in there that he was turn that church into his own. He had to move it all out. And we watched him grab his little bag, grab his little toys, and go home like this. And then there was a couple of times where he got snappy and was ready to fight and all of that. We got all that on video, okay? Because we had someone with the link that was watching it. So that is the glory of God's story in a nutshell. But when he went to trial, it was about, from the criminal aspect, it was Pauline Anderson who had actually filed a lawsuit against him. That's one of the lawsuits that was named when he tried to do the little press conference. And then Brandon Belmonte, who I don't even know what happened to him. He might have pled or something already. I know he had a case on his own, so I don't know what's going on with him. I have to double check the docket on him. It was Brandon Belmonte. It was like attempted extortion or something like that. And it was some type of tax. We'll see. Not tax, but like document forger, something. It's in the document that we about to go over. So that is the background for now. You said, remember when him and Tasha K got into it on live? He was so mad she mentioned his missing side too. The Mark Lamont Hill interview was, it was so, he thought, you get me. That man thought he was so much greater than what he was. It was almost, he lived someplace else. He was not here on earth with the rest of us because he believed everything coming out of his mouth. Like, I really do believe that. But yeah, with the Tasha K, so he and Tasha K teamed up because they had, that enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they were both beefing with somebody else, another content creator. And so they kind of teamed up with that. But then Tasha learned about him. Tasha, whoever it is, she going to like everybody's fair game. So she goes and she gets information about him because she knew about Gloria God. She knew about all of that. And she talked about him. And I remember the live when Whitehead found out that she talked about him. People was on there like, Tasha was going in on you, bro. What you do to her? Tasha is roasting you on her platform. And he was like, who, me? Oh, no, Tasha ain't did that. Oh, no, Tasha ain't did nothing like that. He really was like, Tasha is his homegirl. That didn't happen. Y'all must be mistaken. And then finally, the proof is in the fruit. He saw it and he was like, oh. And then eventually he sued Tasha K. That was another thing. He sued everybody. All right. He sued Tasha K. He sued Larry Reed. He sued King Jives. Who else did he sue? Was that it? He threatened to sue me about 50 times. I think that's it. Is that all he sued? But yeah, Tasha K was the first one to win hers, I think. Larry won his, and I don't think he ever served King Jive. So those didn't go anywhere. He never served him. He never confined him. So he never got served. But I know Larry won his and Tasha won hers too. Oh, he sued Miss Jones. Y'all remember that? Miss Jones was the first one to win. Remember, Miss Jones did a segment where she talked about him on her show. And he sued her, got smacked around, and even I think he might have been ordered to pay attorney fees because it was the anti-slap. She was the first one, I think, to win. The radio host. Yep, she was the first one. So yeah, if you talked about him negatively, he was threatening to sue. And at that time, he had this attorney that was repping him on all of his cases and whatever he came up with. And if he got sued, he would come in or whatnot. And so that was one of the ones and they lost. There was another lawsuit with we going down the Whitehead memory lane. There was another campaign worker, Yves Andre. He just now got an order against Whitehead maybe like 3 months ago. So he just got an order against him he worked for him. Remember when Mayor Adams, before he was mayor, he was Brooklyn Borough president. And when he left, Whitehead wanted to take his spot. I heard he got spanked, like he was like number 3 or something when he ran. But what he did was went in the hood. I guess he had the nice cars and he got hood people that was kind of just geeked to think I'm in vicinity of someone that will probably be in a political position. And it was a guy named Yves Andre who was kind of like offering to be the head of this campaign, this hood campaign, the people in the hood. And he got people to work his campaign from like the homeless shelters and all type of places, to pay him. So what Yves Andre would do is he got the people, he would pay him out of his pocket according to him. He would pay him out of his pocket, and then Whitehead would keep telling him, I'm going to pay you back, I'm going to pay you back. And I guess he never paid him back. And it took him, he came out of thousands of dollars according to him. And so he just lost that money. So when he seen everybody talking about him online and he's seen everything or surrounding him, he decided to sue him. And Whitehead, first he had a lawyer, I think, that kind of responded. And then once he got into all this trouble, he even got into it with his lawyer, where the lawyer ended up withdrawing out of cases. And we went over that because the lawyer said he was like threatening him and all of that. So his lawyer got out of Dodge with Whitehead. And so he ended up on his own. And Yves Andre won by default. I think he won his by default. But yes. And another thing with Yves Andre that was funny, when I went to the criminal trial over there in the Southern District of New York, where all the happenings are, Yves Andre came one time and he was acting up. Okay. He was in there. Soon as he hit the hallway, he was like, where's my money? I went to the bathroom, came out. Yves Andre had his look all in his face. Where's my money? He was like, give me my money. I was like, hold up. Like, I was the peacemaker. Okay. I went in between him. I said, listen, we are at the federal courthouse. Okay. These marshals have good aim. This is not what you want to do. All right. I'm going to need you to calm down and relax. Do things the proper way. What you think he about to pull the money out of his pocket? Uh-huh. We just heard them on the stand say that he had $9.99 in his account when he allegedly doctored up some documents in order to get these loans. He don't got it. Why are you hollering and going crazy in front of these marshals that are sharpshooters? What are you doing? And so he calmed down a little bit, and then we went back into the courtroom, and then of course Whitehead's attorneys, because they was reaching for anything they can get, they stand up like, Your Honor, it's a guy back there who said some things in front of the jurors, and we want a mistrial. I said, look at you. See, look at you. So then they said, we're gonna ask the jurors if they heard anything. The jurors came out. They was like, huh? We ain't hear nothing. What you talking about? And so he still had to go ahead and try. He knew he was losing. He knew he was losing. He was like trying to do anything. Then it was like he said he went out and told and yelled, and we think it's prejudicial to our client because he yelled talking about that they owed him money, that he owed him money. I was like, this guy. So anyway, that just goes to show you that when it comes to this guy, he's gonna reach at every straw that he can, and this is no different. Work in Progress said he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for a bald-headed Pam meddling. I think he kind of thinks that to a degree. Because what happened, first of all, I'm not the Fed, so they was on his neck anyway. I ain't had nothing to do with that. But I do believe that as far as the public perception, I think, and this part is my opinion, I think that he was trying to reinvent himself so that people that did not know him, which would be us, because now he gained this national attention. He was like on CNN and everything when the robbery of the church happened. So I think he was using this moment as a way to reinvent himself and to really try to get a following on social media and really use this as a way to get money. Every day it's like this is the seed for today is healing. The seed for today is freedom. Everyone, this is my Cash App. The seed for today is freedom. So that's the type of stuff that he was doing. And when he would give these stories, like he said, he made it seem like he had a post-conviction motion that was pending, and he was wrongfully convicted when he did the first 7 years. And that's why he got out early, because he got like 21 years and he got out after 7. Well, for those that know me and know my platform, I do wrongful convictions in real life. So I was intrigued. I'm like, okay. And I have a couple of attorneys that when they come to Michigan, I sponsor them. I have a couple of attorneys from New York that do a lot of wrongful conviction. So honestly, I kind of inquired into it, like, was he really wrongfully convicted? That was before I really knew a lot of stuff that he had been doing. So I looked him up and I was looking at the transcripts, and it was like a comedic break. Everything in the transcript was so funny. And the judge went off on him. Judge told him he was scary. He was worse than the worst of the criminals, because this was around when the internet was first really being used like that. Like, remember when we were younger, we had dial up and you got some of y'all don't remember that, but I'm just saying, like, the line would be busy. You got to have a phone. You had to have a landline because you had to put that mug. I used to put that in the back of my little Apple computer. Like, that's what we did. So, of course, the internet has evolved over the years, and that was around the time 05, 06, and all of that, of which the judge was like, you're dangerous because you found a way. So it's alleged that he had a girlfriend who worked at a dealership, and she was like giving him people's information that were coming for cars to purchase. And so he would have their information, or he had the password or something. It was either she gave the information or he had a password, allegedly. And somehow he got access to these people's information and he was buying things that obviously didn't belong to him to get. And so he had some identity thefts and frauds and all of that. And he had a multitude of charges. Like it was probably, and I know this is going to be too many that I'm going to say, but it might have been about 30 something charges or 30 something counts. And then the jury found him guilty on half of the charges. So it was almost like 2 counts for each thing. It was maybe 2 charges for each allegation for each person or something like that. He was found not guilty on like half of them. And so because he was found not guilty on half of them, from what I noticed, the judge basically like mixed up the numbers, mixed up the counts. So anyway, he ended up getting out pretty much on a technicality. But that was part of his talking point when he was like running for Brooklyn Borough president. Part of the talking points were that he was able to fight and he got himself out. He had lawyer after lawyer who came in, but by the grace of God, he was able to get himself out. So I was reading it. I'm like, bro, you are not getting out. You did not get out because they felt like it was police misconduct. He mentioned people. I think it was Tracy was in his chat. Tracy, he mentioned a prosecutor. And Tracy was in his chat like, bro, that was not your prosecutor though. Like, what are you talking about? So everybody was on his neck from over here that were researching. And so he created this whole scenario on how he was wrongfully convicted. He about to get out, he's about to get his name, not be a convicted felon and all that. And it turned out he got out early because it was a technicality. And he had some good time. He was a good inmate. And so he got the credits for that as well. But he wanted to make it seem like it was something substantive, such as the police planted evidence or fabricated or whatever. But that wasn't the case. We read the cases, we read the transcripts, we looked, there was no post-conviction motion. He actually had lost all his appeals. So he ended up, except for like the resentencing that they did or something like that. But for the most part, from the substantive aspect, it appeared that he lost most of them. But anyways, that is Whitehead. Again, we can talk about him forever because we did talk about him for a good 2 years till he got convicted. Deb said that bum is delusional, has a fantasy life in his mind. Yes, he lives in his own world. JJ said the house that he was squatting in belonged to someone else. That girlfriend of his helped him to steal people's identity. Okay, that's from JJ. Peekaboo said, hey, good to see you. Negro said, hey. Georgia Pete said, what is Lara's trucking? Were you talking to me? Mm-hmm. There. If I'm that old to remember dial up, you are too, sweetie. We're the same age. Linda said Andre was like the guy from the 80s movie where the character says, I want my $2. That's not nice, Deb. I see that. Yes, please hit the like button, y'all. Okay. We did all of that. Patty said those emails and bank statements was wild. They were real wild. So let's get into this. I had to chit chat for a minute anyway, because I haven't been on here in a while. Thank you all for every super chat. Again, I appreciate that. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. See, I ain't even put no block on the door today. You can just go subscribe. You can talk in the chat even if you're not subscribed. That's just how nice I am today because I haven't been on in a minute. So let's pull up this document again. I ain't even want to go because I'm going to be honest. I looked at his document that he filed and I was like, huh? That's what I said. So his argument, for those of you that don't know why he's trying to get out, is he's basically saying, you guys know how our president is. He feels like he was targeted and that he was indicted because he was targeted. Hence the text that accidentally came out today, allegedly. And so Mayor Adams, they tried to dismiss so this new head of the DOJ, Pam Bondi, met with Mayor Adams and Spiro from Quinn Emanuel. They had this big old meeting. They came to the conclusion they wanted his indictment when Mayor Adams got indicted. They wanted him dismissed without prejudice, basically saying that they can bring it back. So there was a big old issue on whether his indictment can be dismissed without prejudice or if it has to be with prejudice. The judge ultimately said, listen, I don't think it's fair that you can have, and I don't think there's support in the law that you can just dismiss people without prejudice and then they don't know if you're going to come back and bring it. When you basically say, I'm going to dismiss this because we don't believe that we have enough evidence to convict him, but we're going to hold it over your head for however number of years, the court was like, there's no support for that. So they dismissed his case with prejudice. So they can't bring it back unless they find something that they had never indicted him with in the first place. Adams is good to go. And the argument that Adams had was that he believed it was politically targeted, especially since he was real hard on immigration, which of course is a buzzword over there in the White House with the whole immigration fiascos that are going on. And so he said that he felt like he was politically targeted. This is the same feelings that the president said that he has. And so that was supposed to be why it was even, which is weird because Pam Bondi, I guess at first she was saying that she hadn't really looked into the case like that. And then I think she came up with she felt like it should be dismissed. And then if they feel like after they investigate again that he should be re-indicted, he can. And the court's like, no, we're not going to have that over his head like that. So anyway, after the decision of the DOJ, of course, there were many people that worked at the SDNY who either resigned. I don't know if they got fired, but there were a few resignations because they were like, we're not dismissing this. We took an oath and we believe that we have evidence against Mayor Adams. So they did not want to dismiss it. And they said, can we talk about this? I love my job, but I can't do it. They was like, have a great day. We'll accept your resignation. Ma'am, sir, we'll accept your real resignation. So people ended up losing leaving their jobs because of it. It was a big thing. Meanwhile, Mayor Adams, of course, running for re-election and all of that. So this made him free and clear to run and do the things that he wanted to try to do when it comes to that. Well, Whitehead is trying to connect himself to this whole Mayor Adams fiasco. Of course, the president did sign an executive order that they would look into cases that they feel like were politically motivated. However, there was a very clear disclaimer that you don't have a legal right. We're not creating a legal right for you to do anything. We're just saying that if you feel like it was politically motivated, and we may look into your case, and it was just a letter, him airing out his grievances and how he felt like he was wrongly treated. And he said, so if you too felt you felt like you were wrongfully targeted and treated wrongly because of political in this previous administration, you may have a chance to get your case reviewed. But again, towards the end, it specifically says, but you don't have a right. So if you don't have a actual legal right, you can't bring it in the court and say, well, you got to dismiss this because he said I might be able to have him review it. They were very specific that you didn't have a legal right. So he's using the presidential decision on Mayor Adams, and also he's using the executive order as his authority, I guess, in order to get his case dismissed and to get out on probation. I'm not on probation, but get out on bond. So let's see what I said before earlier, if you're just getting here, this document will kind of give a background of the various filings that Whitehead has already done. So we can get it all done in one whop and don't have to come back except for the order on what the judge decides on this case. So, dear Judge Schofield, I know she's sick of this case. She probably like, can we please just close this out? The government respectfully writes in opposition to the defendant's motion seeking 1, dismissal and or vacator of his conviction, 2, disqualification of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, and 3, bail pending appeal. So that is what he is asking in his motion. The defendant's motion is unsupported by the law and the facts and is entirely without merit. For the reasons that follow, the government respectfully submits that the motion should be denied in its entirety. And they wrapped this thing up in 5 pages. Didn't take them long. I don't know. Let me see how long Whitehead's motion was. Because his motion, let me see how long his motion was. Let me take away the top page. His motion was 37 pages, it looks like. Let me see. Oh, no. It was 27 pages. His motion was 27 pages, and the government has responded in a cool 5. Okay. They responded in 5 pages. So this is the relevant background. On March 11, 2024, following a jury trial, the defendant was convicted of all 5 counts of the indictment. Okay. Specifically, based on the overwhelming evidence presented at trial, the jury found that the defendant was guilty of count 1, defrauding a victim, Pauline Anderson, of approximately $90,000 from in or about 2021 through in or about 2022 in violation of 18 U.S.C. sections 1343 and 2. Count 2, attempting to defraud a victim, Brandon Belmonte, of certain real estate interests and approximately $500,000 in or about 2022 in violation of 18 U.S.C. sections 1343, 1349, and 2. Count 3, attempting to extort Belmonte of approximately $5,000 using threats of force, violence, and physical harm in violation of 18 U.S.C. section 1951. Now, what I will have to agree with Whitehead on is this Belmonte thing was a bit shaky. Okay, it was a bit shaky. And what Belmonte did was, I believe, because there were a lot of complaints against Belmonte and people that contacted the FBI allegedly about Belmonte. And so I think because Belmonte kind of knew the relationship with Whitehead, Belmonte alleged in an interview what he did was he called his friend who works at the AUSA office, according to him, or former friend who worked there, and said, I think this guy is trying to extort me and use Mayor Adams. So I think that's what triggered all of this, because he did call them and say that. And so from that point on, I think what Belmonte was trying to do was get him a little bit of favor himself. That's why I think Belmonte was shocked when he got indicted, because he got indicted, but it was on the Eastern District of New York instead of the Southern District. And Belmonte at the trial, when you looked at, he was recording. So he was wiretapped, I guess, he had a recording from the FBI. He also recorded FaceTime. So all of this was literally catching Whitehead in probably his worst moments, and he got caught up in the game. So I could see why he was kind of on fire about Belmonte, but I mean, they had the evidence and the jury believed everything about Belmonte. But what is interesting is Belmonte pled the 5th, so he did not testify because he pled the 5th, which means they probably did not give him immunity, which was probably a strategic thing to do, allowing him to plead the 5th. And then he didn't even take the stand. So all of this stuff was basically admitted, things that had to do with Belmonte that was self-incriminating and incriminating Whitehead, and he never took the stand and couldn't be cross-examination. I have no doubt if Don Florio did cross-examine him, I think that it would have been a little bit of a shift in how this outcome came with Belmonte, because she is a good, like, from what I saw, her cross-examination, you can't help your facts. You can't help your facts. You can only deal with the facts that you have. And the few times that she did because her associate did most of the work. And I don't know what his experience is, but he did most of the work. But Don Florio, the times that I've seen her where she did cross-examination, she did her thing. So I think she is a decent attorney. She seems to be a decent attorney. So I think if she would have crossed Belmonte, it would have, those counts, I don't know if they would have stuck. But that's just my opinion. Count 4, making false statements to federal agents on or about June 8, 2022 in violation of 18 USC. So he said he had a phone, that he gave them his only phone, and he actually had another phone of which he texted in the house, and he texted like, yo, mayor, call me ASAP, when they came to his house, when the feds came to get his devices. So he lied to the agents. And count 5, defrauding victim lenders in or about 2018 in efforts to obtain a $250,000 business loan in violation of 18 USC section 1343. So that was the count of which, and they had a whole like other evidence that they submitted as well. It was other acts, and it was more to show that this is his MO, where he would put in applications, they showed the site where he created his check stubs, or somebody created the check stubs. He would say he had this amount of money in the bank and he only had this amount of money. He had documents from Wells Fargo, and they had someone from Wells Fargo to show that the documents were cut and paste, like it was a business account and he was changing numbers, and it was really, for instance, $7 where he made it $7 million. And then he was crossing the accounts where he was using regular account numbers for a business account. And so they were able to point that out, that no, we don't have business accounts that start in those numbers. We don't have personal accounts that start like, so they had somebody on the stand that showed that as well. On the actual bank documents weren't accurate. They showed, then with Pauline Anderson, they showed bank records showing where he spent the money. Like once it got deposited, where he spent this money at. So it was like the Polo store, Uber Eats, Louis Vuitton, all of that stuff. So some of that stuff you guys saw on your favorite bishop, they saying that Pauline Anderson is the one that purchased it, even though it was against what she wanted. Okay. So those are the counts for that. All right. Little baby said, good attorney, horrible client. Well, you can't make your facts. Like you got to deal with the facts that you have. That's why I said when people see, for instance, Doug Weinstein, I think is his name, that was also on YSL. He did well for his client on YSL, but then he just got beat, real bad on a televised case just a month ago. You're going to win some. If you're not losing some cases, you ain't trying cases. I mean, it is what it is. All facts. There's going to be some cases where the government just got it all wrong, and you're able to prove it, and you did your proper investigation, and you can contradict half of what they're saying, and you have alibi witnesses or whatnot. And then you got some cases where it's like, dang, is that you on camera? I guess if you squint, that could look like somebody else. You in your mind like, yeah, that's you. That's you, all right. Nothing you can really do about it. They hired you to do a job. They don't want to take a plea, or maybe a plea wasn't even offered. We don't know. And you got to go with it. But I think Whitehead wanted to go to trial. Like he was saying he's going to be exonerated. He's going to win. He was saying that. So there's that. So let's get into it. On June 17, 2024, the court denied the defendant's post-trial motion for a judgment of acquittal or a new trial under Federal Rules of Criminal Procedures 29 and 33. So on June 17th, the court denied his motion for judgment of acquittal. And then the opinion was filed. We went over that, I think. On June 17, 2024, the court sentenced the defendant to 108 months imprisonment to be followed by 3 years supervised release, and impose restitution, forfeiture, and a $500 mandatory special assessment. At sentencing, the court highlighted the defendant's incontrovertible perjury when he testified at trial. His criminal history, which included prior crimes of dishonesty, the lack of deterrence provided by his prior criminal sentences, and his lack of remorse or appreciation of the impact of his crimes, or even in some ways, the fact of his crimes. The court explained that any one of Whitehead's crimes would warrant a substantial sentence and impose the sentence based on all of those crimes in order to promote respect for the law, to deter Whitehead and others from committing similar crimes, and importantly, to protect the public from further crimes. So now, this is what he has done since he has been in prison in the last year. The defendant filed various appeals, pro se and informa pauperis, to the Second Circuit. See US v. Whitehead. Second Circuit, case number 24-1769, 24-3162, 25-229, and 25-231. So those are all the cases he done filed already. The defendant moved for bail pending appeal, which the Second Circuit denied on September 18, 2024, concluding that the defendant had failed to identify a substantial issue of law or fact to be raised on appeal. The defendant has also appealed from the judgment of conviction entered on June 17, 2024, as discussed further below. Whitehead, Second Circuit, case number 24-1769. In this appeal, which has been fully briefed before the Second Circuit and is expected to be scheduled for oral argument in this term, so he's supposed to have an oral argument coming up. The defendant has been represented by two sets of court-appointed counsel. The defendant's first set of court-appointed appellate counsel filed an opening brief on January 16, 2025, but moved on March 24, 2025 to be relieved as counsel because, quote, new circumstances related to Mr. Whitehead's case have led him to insist on pursuing a course of action with which I have a fundamental disagreement, end quote. So basically, his first appellate court-appointed counsel requested to be removed off of the case because Whitehead wanted him to go in one direction because, he know everything, and he wanted to go in another direction. He was like, and I'm not about to put my name on what he wants me to do. And so he withdrew. The defendant's second set of appellate counsel was appointed on March 28, 2025. Current appellate counsel was provided the opportunity to file a new opening brief and declined to do so, ultimately deciding to rely on the brief filed by the former appellate counsel. On appeal, the defendant claims that 1, the trial evidence was insufficient to support the defendant's conviction on counts 2, 3, and 4 of the indictment. The court abused its discretion in admitting evidence of uncharged similar fraud under Federal Rules 404B. That's what we were talking about earlier, where I said there were other applications he allegedly filled out for loans, and I think his house and the Connecticut, it was like different real estate and loans or whatever that he filled out, of which he was not indicted for. And so those are other acts. And he's challenging that the other acts should not have been used because it was more prejudicial than probative, showing that he has this MO and pattern of filling out these documents that are not accurate. So that is another count that he is appealing. 3, this court improperly upheld Belmonte's invocation of his Fifth Amendment right and precluded his testimony. 4, this court abuses discretion by delivering an uncalled witness's instruction. And 5, the government engaged in misconduct in its summation and rebuttal addresses by describing the defendant as having told, quote, lies and perpetrated cons. So he's mad at the government for saying he was a liar and that he's perpetrated crimes. And 6, the defendant's sentence was procedurally unreasonable. And then they have a footnote for number 2 that says the Second Circuit has denied and dismissed the remainder of the defendant's appeals, including his motion for bail pending appeal, as lacking, quote, an arguable basis either in fact or in law, end quote. Let's get into the discussion. In his motion, the defendant asked the court to grant him extraordinary relief that is unsupported by the law or facts. In particular, the defendant asked the court to 1, overturn a jury verdict and release him from a lawfully imposed sentence of incarceration. 2, disqualify the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York from continuing to prosecute his case. And 3, grant him bail pending appeal. The defendant's motion should be denied in its entirety. First, the court should deny the defendant's motion for lack of jurisdiction under Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure 37A. In light of the defendant's pending appeal before the Second Circuit. So they're saying you don't even got jurisdiction to hear this. That's the first issue. All right. Second, the defendant's request that his conviction be dismissed or vacated lacks any basis in the law. The defendant has been convicted and sentenced, and his criminal case before this court has concluded. His motion for dismissal and or vacator is procedurally untethered to any statute or rule authorizing requests for relief from a district court at this stage of his criminal case. The only potential authorities cited by the defendant in support of his request are Executive Order 14-14-7 and the Rule 48A motion filed in a separate criminal case. But Executive Order 14-14-7 does not entitle the defendant to any relief. It does. It specifically tells you that you don't have a right of anything. Like it just tells you that. Indeed, it expressly provides that it, quote, is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or equity by any party against the United States. It says it clear as day. It does. Similarly, the defendant is in no way entitled to benefit from or rely upon the Rule 48A motion filed by the Department of Justice in a separate case. Relief under Rule 48A by the rule's express terms must be sought by the government, and here the government opposes the defendant's request for post-conviction relief. So that is the motion that was filed in Adams' case. So he's trying to use the stuff they said in Adams' case and apply it to his and to file a motion under 48A, even though the government has to be the one to initiate this and basically say, we don't want to pursue this anymore, or we want to drop it. The defendant has cited no law to suggest that the dismissal of a separate criminal case entitles him to any relief, much less the extraordinary relief of dismissal or vacator over the government's objection following a trial and jury verdict. They said, which is true, the government initiated that and they wanted Adams' case to be dismissed. They don't want that for you. Whitehead, they said they're not giving you anything. That's not what they want for you. They're not offering you the same deal. That's not what they're offering. The government respectfully submits that the above jurisdictional and procedural defects are dispositive, and based on the foregoing, the defendant's motion for dismissal and or vacator should be denied. The defendant's motion to disqualify the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York from his case is equally meritless and should also be denied. There is no basis in this case, for the extreme remedy of disqualification of an entire U.S. Attorney's Office that the defendant seeks. The defendant has failed to make any non-frivolous allegation, much less a, quote, showing of bad faith, misconduct, or actual prejudice on the part of the prosecutor to justify this request. Finally, the defendant's motion for bail pending appeal should be denied. The defendant is serving his sentence, and this court has, quote, lost its authority to grant bail. Under the Bail Reform Act, U.S. v. Conja 450, Federal Sub 3rd 491, 495, and that's over at the Southern District of New York, and it's a 2020 case, which stands for the proposition the sentence commences and is executed upon imposition and remand to BOP custody. In addition, this court has already denied the defendant's motion for bail pending appeal because the defendant was convicted of attempted extortion, a crime of violence, and his detention is mandatory. So they're pointing you to the transcript on May 22nd, 2024, when Whitehead was remanded, and I was the only person. Well, it was probably, I think it was 2 people. I think there was another person that was there too, but it was only a couple of us. I wasn't no family. I'm going to say that. When he was first remanded, he was remanded because he was convicted of attempted extortion. So before he was sentenced, he was already remanded into custody. That's the day that we rode on the elevator together, and he was really mad because he thought I was going to wait 30 minutes for another elevator because we had to get on the same elevator. You better suck it up, Chuck, because we getting on this elevator. I'm not waiting for nothing, okay? And he was whispering to his attorney, that's that bitch right there. That's that bitch that be online talking about me. And he was doing this. Don't look at her. Don't look at her. We standing there like this. I'm smirking on the elevator. Then he sat on the bench in front of the courtroom. I sat on the bench next to him. I mean, at this point, we might as well just get along. I'm not going anywhere. I wasn't going anywhere, so we might as well be cool. Like, I ain't never, you hate me, I don't hate you. We could breathe the same oxygen. I'm just saying. Sat next to him, he was like, and he saw those marshals in the back. They were standing there like this. The marshals came off that elevator and stood in the back, and then they tried to open up the courtroom. He almost peed his pants because he knew right then he was being remanded, because they went to open that door and it was like, they were like, yeah, it's still locked. So he stood there because they knew they was coming into his courtroom. He turned around to his lawyer. He was like, are they coming for me? Are they coming for me? So I ain't giving y'all no information out here. Hold on. Oh, okay. Are they coming for me? He was like, no, they're not coming for you. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. He was like, no, they wouldn't know already. They wouldn't. Now, he didn't say they weren't coming for him. He just said they wouldn't know that yet. Somebody called him. I don't know who it was. Judge came in there. She was like, all rise. They said, be seated. She had her paper. She said, on so-and-so day, Lamor Whitehead was convicted and by the Bail Reform Act, he has been convicted of a crime of violence, and therefore he must be remanded. She was like, she got up and left. So you will be remanded into custody, sir. Good luck. Like, dang. So yeah, that's what happened. But let's go on. Okay, so the bail pending appeal should be denied. The defendant is serving his sentence and this court has lost authority. So that's basically their argument. And they got all this case law where a defendant is convicted of a crime of violence. The court shall order detention. Those are all of the cases they used. And the crazy part is, I don't even know if the government was even going to go for detaining him. Like, I think they might have waited. They knew he had, kids, he's married and all of that. I just don't even think the government was really thinking about him, because remember with Diddy, they immediately were like, they went to argue bail. Judge was like, no. You know, they argued both sides and he was remanded. So, and then they tried to come back again. Judge said no, because basically you admitted to violence, and the attorney admitted to violence in his closing arguments and all of that. So they was like, no. So it was right there where they talked about it. When he was convicted, he was able to walk out. Like, he was already on bond. And so he was able to walk out. And I don't think they were going to mess with him. But then he went on live and he decided to allegedly show documents that were under protective order, which means you cannot display this to the world. But he was so concerned about what people thought in the public, people that wasn't going to do an ounce of your time, people that didn't even really know you like that, people that could care less about you, but he wanted to prove to them that he hadn't done it. So there were, I guess, information that he felt if it came to light or was able to be introduced at trial, he wouldn't have had this outcome. So he sat down and he picked up that document and he was like, you see this? You see this? And the government took all them screenshots and was like, yes, I have. Yes, I have. And so they basically were saying that he violated the protective order and da 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 da. So then he had to come back for that. And then the government hit him with, he don't need to be out here anyway because he was convicted of attempted extortion, which is the crime of violence, and he need to be remanded. So I don't even think that if he would have went home, got his business in order, I don't even think they would have messed with him like that. Yeah, like Star Bill, basically. Like, I don't even think they would have came for him like that. Mr. Jones said, I still have to laugh when I think of the day he started calling you bald head Pam. I laugh every time I see your face now. You are great at your book. He did. It was crazy because I talked about Whitehead for like 6-7 months and he dragged. It was a few of us that talked about him. I'm going to say a good 5. It may have been more, but the ones that I was somewhat connected to and supported, it was probably like Really B talks about him, Chef Don Jives talked about him. He was one of the first ones because I used to come on his platform. So he talked about who else used to talk about? I know Thais used to talk about it was somebody else. It was a few. The young lady started talking about him, the one that he allegedly choked up at the church. That's a whole nother story. I don't care for her, so I'm not talking about her. But she talked about him. So it was about 5 or 6 people that kind of talks about him on a consistent basis. And they would say he ain't gonna say nothing about Pam because she a lawyer. They ain't never saying nothing about Pam. And then one day he was in the middle, he was at his house. I ain't gonna never forget because everybody was sending me the clips. One day, that man was in there in the middle. He was walking back and forth. He had a very nice house. Okay, we ain't gonna talk about how he allegedly got it, but he had a very nice house. And so he had a nice little grand piano. He started doing his services at the house when he got kicked up out of Glory of God. So he couldn't do it at church anymore. So he was doing it at the house, saying he was going to get the church back. He was still saying it was his church. He was going to get it back, blah, blah, blah. So he's still doing his little Sunday services. And he was walking back and forth. He had the praise music on. And then he just snapped and started going off on me. Everybody started sending it. He was like, and that bald-headed Pam, and Pam, do you listen to that liar? She's a YouTube lawyer. She's on YouTube because won't nobody hire her. She ain't no real lawyer. She must suck. That's why she on YouTube. And Deb was heated. When I tell you Deb was mad, Deb was so hot. Okay. So then him and Deb got into it. Then Deb was like telling his wife. It turned into a mess. Because you know me, I just laughed it off. And it was like, whatever, bro. Like, I don't even pay him any attention. I'm just doing what I got to do. And that's it. But he was definitely huffing and puffing.
You's a clown. That's what you. Why don't you call me a cardboard bishop now? Huh? You tough? Call me a cardboard bishop now.
He's not gonna call you that.
Huh?
I'm not gonna call
look on Facebook Live. Call me a cardboard bishop now. You clown. That's what you are. You clown. That's what you are. Why don't you say what you said on Facebook Live, sucker?
No.
Woo, homeboy needed anger management. He was mad, but that's how he said that sucker. That's how he said bald. He said bald-headed pan. You see her, bald-headed self. She just mad. She ain't no real lawyer. You can't be on YouTube. What's she on YouTube for? She got claimed. Oh, he was going off on me. Everybody was sending me the clip like, oh, did she say? And they was, some of them was happy. You know, that was kind of some people that I cleaned out of my little circle too around that time, because they was kind of happy that he was talking about me. He talked about Deb, and folk was smiling, and they kind of had a little bit of glee. It was a few of them that was, you know, secretly hating like we were cool. And then when that happened, they was way too giddy about it. I was like, oh, okay, I clock you. And I've been treating them just like that ever since. And they like, Pam, why don't you answer my DMs? No, we don't have anything to talk about. Keep laughing with the bishop. Ha ha hell. Keep laughing. Y'all made me have a flashback. But yeah, so that was good time. That was good times. You said, yeah, the clown was so wrong, but he is funny to me. No, he is funny. I get it. I was literally pulling up stuff of which he wanted to stay buried. If you can come out and you don't have anybody looking at anything that has to do with you, he could have literally created an entire environment. Remember, he's going down the street in his car, in his Rolls Royce. The house was beautiful. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was looking like, well, how much is that gonna be for sale? When I seen that he was losing it in foreclosure, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I was like, how much? I said, Deb, would that be bought if we bought that house? I asked him. I was like, what you think about moving to Paramus? The house was nice. I liked the closet. I was gonna go live from his closet. Shoot. But you know, that would have just been petty, and that's not godly. So I didn't do it. But I was really tempted. I looked into it. I was like, I'm about that house. I'm about that house. But if the way he was the perception, and just lets you know how the internet is, that it does make you feel like he was more than what he was. And so he would have been able to create, because we were able to find his old Instagram. It had a couple thousand followers. Remember, the one he was on was 1 million followers. And he was just a regular smeglo trying to get in, you know, trying to get over. Then we know it was a situation about who his daddy is and whether his daddy is Arthur Miller and all of that. It was a lot with Whitehead. He was content for days. He definitely was content for days. Kay said that would have sent him spiraling. Yeah, he might have came for me, Kay. I had to think about my safety. Nita, I know how. Listen, I look at every house that you go in that it might be demonic. You better get to praying over it. Shoot. All right, so this is the end of it, I think. They just basically said, accordingly, even if the defendant's detention were not mandatory for the reasons set forth above, the issues raised in the defendant's motion are meritless and thus do not raise a substantial question on appeal. The defendant should continue to serve his sentence while his appeal proceeds. So he should continue to reside where he is currently residing, is what they said. So then there's a footnote. To the extent the court is not inclined to deny the defendant's motion based upon the jurisdictional and procedural grounds discussed above, the government respectfully requests the opportunity to address the purported factual allegations of misconduct advanced by the defendant, all of which are without merit. So they ain't even addressed the misconduct because they called him a con and a liar during closing. They were like, but Judge, if you feel like this ain't enough, I gave you enough to chew on just to tell them no. But if you need more, just let us know. We'll supplement it and we'll add his misconduct, and we'll explain why that should be denied as well. In conclusion, for the foregoing reasons, the defendant motion should be denied in its entirety. So that is, in fact, the government's response to Whitehead's motion for dismissal or vacator and to be out pending appeal. And so the next step is the judge will give an order, and that's that. Any questions? Any questions? Nita B said, TD, I just said the same to my mom. He said he was still in churches and daddies, churches and daddies. Little baby said, yeah, he has 1 million followers and only fit. Well, when he got on live and dragged me, or he, when he started dragging Tasha K, when they had their little back and forth, we all watched. Like a lot of us that were keeping track of him, like the YouTubers that did, we screen recorded it and we would talk about it, just how some people screen record and play it and critique it and do their commentary. We would do the same thing with his. We would just play it. And so that's when he would get the most views. But if he was on there trying to do church and pray for people and prophesy and all of that, he wasn't getting play like that. But yeah, so anyway, that is the motion. We'll see if anything else is going on. And if something else is going on, we'll be back to talk about it. I'll try not to wait as long as I did this time. Let me see if there's anything I'm missing that I want to touch on real quick before I get off of here. Let's see what y'all saying. It just, like, honestly though, Whitehead did not bother me like that. Like he was funny to me. He didn't bother, like I could see through everything. Most of the stuff he said was a lie. And then I had family members, I had ex-workers, I had so many people that called me behind the scenes. And this is why he should really know that it wasn't like he swore we made millions of dollars. I ain't never made $1,000 in a month off of him, so I ain't know what he's talking about, let alone $1 million. But if I really just wanted to really bury him like that, I would have put everybody's tea out here. Even people that told me, please don't say nothing, because people were scared of him for some reason. I don't know. And they would say, don't say nothing. But a lot of times people will say something anyway. I didn't do that. I respected. I don't know why they just wanted to talk to me and tell me their stories if I wasn't going to talk about it. But I had people sending me stuff. Even if they didn't come on, they would put me in directions of other things that he had done. I did not thoroughly examine every little nook and cranny of what people said about him. I didn't do that. So I tried to stick to the documents, the transcripts. I went to the trial. I said I was going to the trial, so I did go. He should have been expecting it because I did say it online, and that was that. He's the one that took it. Yeah, he's the one that took it where to a whole nother place. It just was not that deep. So anyway, y'all, if you don't know Whitehead and you just was on here because you support your girl, I appreciate it. And if you want to watch those videos, they're early on. You might have to scroll a bit because he's been in prison for, like I said, over a year. So shoot, the latest videos is probably over a year ago. I think I might have talked about him a couple of times since he's been in, but not too much. As you see, he's filed multiple documents. I haven't talked about any of them. But on his Facebook page, let me pull him up so y'all know what he looks like. Let me pull up the Facebook. So y'all can see, for those of you that missed what he looks like. There he is in the green, and that's his closet. You see, he had, like, they described his closet as being identical to you going to a dressing room at a major department store. Like he had lights, mirrors. I mean, his closet was dope. Have to give it to him. Like his closet was dope. This is his little green Gucci suit that y'all said he got off of Canal Street. I don't know where he got them from. Look, September 4th, he got everything for y'all to see. He got a Google Drive. Jail pastor cites Adam dismissal and bid to beat. So they got Law 360 that talked about them. Talked about his motion, I guess. That Law 360 is they probably called him, but hey. And they're basically saying that, so this was the article. A clergyman served a 9-year sentence for fraud cited his ties to the New York City Mayor Eric Adams on Wednesday in a bid to have his conviction overturned in the wake of the Trump administration's dismissal of the charges against Adams. Defendant Lamor Whitehead, the founder of Brooklyn Church Tomorrow International Ministries, who received mentoring from the mayor, asked U.S. District Judge Lorna Schofield, who presided over White's trial, to grant him bail and to review the case anew for possible dismissal or transfer to another federal district. So that was the article from 360. That's his. There go his preacher's picture. Somebody said, did the lady get her life savings back? See, that's the response. August 31st. He tagged TMZ and 8 others, but I ain't see them talk about it. He said, I told y'all once before I was being set up. Breaking legal update on Bishop Lamor Whitehead. On August 27, 2025, Bishop Whitehead's attorney filed a powerful motion in federal court. This motion argues that Bishop Whitehead's conviction should be dismissed or at the very least vacated because the same prosecutors who went after him were just cited by the Department of Justice for misconduct in the Mayor Eric Adams case. The president's new executive order bans the political weaponization of prosecutions, and DOJ already dropped the charges against Mayor Adams. Under that order, Bishop Whitehead was targeted only to get to Mayor Adams, and the case against him was built on shaky, manipulated evidence. The motion asked the court for dismissal or vacator of his conviction, disqualification of the prosecutor's office for conflicts of interest, bail pending appeal so Bishop Whitehead can be released. While this plays out, his legal team argues this is about equal justice. If Mayor Adams' case was tainted and dismissed, Bishop Whitehead deserves the same fair treatment. Please keep Bishop Whitehead in your prayers as he fights for justice continues. We shall overcome. Oh, free Bishop Whitehead. I need y'all to hashtag free Bishop Whitehead. Go ahead and repost this right here if you want, or you can do the laughing emoji like some people have done on here. Lennox Caldwell said, I know you dislocated a shoulder with this reach. I can't. Let's see what the comments are. Linda said, wow. So did the parishioner get her life savings back? So then somebody says the mayor is free. Why is he not? Since it all started with them wanting him to talk against the mayor, a big part of this case started with phone calls and conversations between him and the mayor. Free my boy so he can get a fresh start. And then King Blue said, Celia, let me tell you. He stole and took that old lady's $90,000. He refused to give it back, and he was supposed to buy her a house because he was and said he was into real estate. She kept asking him until he screamed she lost it when he invested it and it wasn't for her house. That's why he got convicted. He had every chance to give that woman her retirement money back, but no. Now he paid his lawyers more than he stole. He should have given it back. $1 million isn't worth my freedom. Nope, he has to buy his back now. Yvonne said, no, leave the bling bishop where he's at. Phil said the evidence was presented. Are you saying the evidence was fabricated? New Jack D. Cat said, Pastor Bling is at it again from prison. Make sure you give that elderly her money back. Julia said the bishop should know the scriptures, right? Meaning you reap what you sow. Enough said. Okay. Somebody, Annette want to know what you tagging Trump for. So apparently they must have tagged Trump up here. Let me see. So anyway, that's what the people had to say. They said some people want them free. They said free my boy. Some people said leave him where he at. But anyway, it will all work itself out, and we hope justice prevail. We're gonna balance those scales of justice right now. Let me show y'all what it's looking like. Let me get my scale. Oh, I'm gonna have to move a lot of stuff to get this. Hold on. Gotta move all my accolades out the way. No. What that meant? Oh, this my heavy thing. All right. This is what the scales is looking like right now, though. Well, I should have cleaned this first while I'll be putting this online. Let y'all know. Right now, it's looking real like this. I'm just saying. This how it's looking right now. For the government, this how it's looking. Look like you up here, Whitehead. I don't know, but we'll see. We shall see how this goes. Now I gotta put all this stuff back up here. All right, y'all. Talk to y'all later. You guys have a good night.